But there will come a time when all those little tricks of the trade, as I call them, will one by one stop working until nothing works. And it'll open when it opens, and it'll close when it closes. And there's really nothing you can do about it. And all the tricks of the trade you use to try to open the aperture back up don't really work anymore. And at that point, you're experiencing another deeper level of a dark night of the will. Now your will, not only could it not pierce through the ego, that had to happen through grace, through the will becoming humble and relinquishing itself. Now will, I want and I don't want, comes up in a new form. I want to stay in that state of spiritual clarity and joy and peace, and I don't want to be in that sort of condensed, aperture-closed ego space. It's not who I am, and there's this other bigger sense of being, or more free sense of being. And at some point you realize that your will cannot assure that the aperture won't close. So again, often after this great, what I call the spiritual honeymoon, you come back from the honeymoon, and there's this kind of back and forth, I got it, I lost it, and you start to encounter the will, and now at a deeper level. And of course, again, the mistakes of thinking become, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? I had this beautiful truth shown to me, given to me, by grace, for nothing, for free. And here I can't even stay in touch with it. I can't even be in that space all the time. And then you try, and of course you can't do it because it's a movement of grace. It's not dependent on your will or your intelligence or how smart you are or bright you are. Again, for some people, they'll keep conceptualizing it in their mind, and they'll just get lost in this sort of little spiritual dream where instead of having a real sense of their truth of their being, they're actually lost in a complicated little mental construct that they made out of a moment of genuine spiritual awakening. That happens a lot. But at some point you have to re-encounter often another level of this dark night of the will, of the ego. And this can be for some people, mildly difficult. For some people it can be crushingly difficult. It just depends on how much resistance there is, how much you struggle against it, how much you mistake the truth of being for some of those fancy spiritual experiences. What you don't know, because it's happening unconsciously, but again, there is a movement of grace, of truth. And the movement of truth there is that you're being weaned out of a sort of a very unconscious identification with will. And you're being weaned away from experiences. Even the experience of wanting to be overtaken by spiritual freedom and ecstasy and all of that may have been part of your own awakening. But you get weaned off it like a child gets weaned off of liquid onto real food, bit by bit. Spiritually, we get weaned off of many of the spiritual graces that we may have received. And when we do, most of us, we really fight against it. Even if we know in our minds that we shouldn't fight against it, most human beings will fight against it. It's just such an instinct to grab on to the pleasurable, to try to hold on to the heaven you found, you see, and to feel terrible about yourself for having lost it. That's the boomerang effect. But there is something that's there is a maturing that's taking place here, which is you're being weaned off of the experiential aspects of truth, the truth of your being. and you're in a deeper being weaned off of or away from your egoic will.